Most people think great collections are built on excitement. They're not. They're built on discipline, on patience, on the quiet ability to see significance before everyone else does. Recently, I spent time speaking with a hockey card collector named Mark, a collector in his mid-30s who has quietly assembled a collection valued at nearly $500,000. What struck me wasn't just the number. It was the mindset behind it. Because behind every serious collection is a way of thinking. Mark's story starts the way many collecting stories do, at a kitchen table, opening packs with his father as a kid. He told me something that immediately resonated. At the time, it wasn't about value. It was about the feeling, the sound of the wrapper, the anticipation, the connection to the game. Like many collectors, life eventually pulled him away from the hobby. School, career, responsibility. But collecting has a way of waiting for you. And years later, when he walked back into a card shop, that feeling returned instantly. Only this time, it was accompanied by something new: perspective. There is always a moment when someone stops being a participant and becomes a collector. For Mark, it was the purchase of a high-grade Sidney Crosby rookie card, his first truly significant acquisition. He described it this way: "That was the moment I stopped chasing cards and started curating a collection." I love that distinction. Chasing is emotional, curating is intentional. From that point forward, every decision became more disciplined. When I asked Mark why Crosby became the foundation of his collection, his answer was immediate and thoughtful. "I'm not collecting statistics, I'm collecting history." Think about that. Crosby represents more than production. He represents an era: leadership, championship pedigree, longevity, global respect. When future generations talk about hockey, his name will remain unavoidable. Sophisticated collectors understand something important. Great collections anchor themselves to legacy. But Mark didn't stop with Crosby, because once you anchor a collection with generational greatness, the next step is context. Connor McDavid, transformational talent. Connor Bedard, the kind of rookie that re-energizes an entire hobby. And emerging players like Macklin Celebrini, where trajectory itself becomes part of the thesis. Mark explained his approach simply: "I'm less interested in volume, and more interested in relevance." That is the language of a serious collector. When people hear $500,000, they often imagine speed. But serious collections are rarely built quickly. They are built deliberately. Mark told me one of the hardest skills he developed was restraint. "If a card doesn't elevate the collection, I pass. Condition matters, scarcity matters, population reports matter, and sometimes, the most intelligent acquisition is the one you don't make." I asked Mark when it first felt like more than a hobby. His answer was striking. "It was the day I documented everything and saw the total. Nearly $500,000, he said that number changed how he thought overnight. Suddenly the questions became different. Where is it stored? How is it protected? What happens if something goes wrong? Because at a certain level, you're no longer protecting cardboard, you're protecting concentrated wealth. What stayed with me most was how Mark described the emotional weight of his collection. Every card carries a memory: the hunt, the negotiation, the wait. But then he added something even more profound. When someone sees your collection, they're seeing how you think. Not just what you bought, what you valued, what you believed would stand the test of time. Great collections are reflections of judgment. Like many collectors, Mark assumed his homeowner's policy protected his cards, until he learned about sublimits, exclusions, transit risk. He told me, that conversation was a wake-up call. You spend years building something, only to realize it may not actually be protected. This is a moment I see often. Collections grow quietly. Responsibility arrives suddenly. There is a mindset shift that separates advanced collectors from the rest. They stop thinking purely as owners and begin thinking as stewards. When I shared that idea with Mark, his response was immediate. Protection stopped feeling optional and started feeling like responsibility. Because the question is no longer, what is this worth today? The question becomes, what is this meant to become tomorrow? I asked Mark a final question. If something happened tomorrow, what would you want your collection to represent? He didn't hesitate. Intentionality, discipline, and clarity for the people I leave it to. That is legacy thinking. Because legacy is not defined by what you leave behind, but by how prepared you were to leave it. There is a powerful lesson inside stories like this. Great collections are never accidents. They are built patiently, guided by conviction, and ultimately, protected with intention. Because if something matters enough to collect, it matters enough to protect. Behind every collection is a mindset. And the strongest collectors understand that building wealth and protecting it are inseparable. I'm Enzo, and this is the Private Collection Podcast. Protect what you collect and build a legacy worth preserving.